Hello. Let's try a new format. Today we will be talking about why I am an agnostic atheist. I know this isn't my usual kind of content, and I don't plan to talk about religion a lot on this channel. I prefer talking about more fun subjects. However, I've decided I am also going to talk about some less fun subjects just because I find them important or interesting. This is not to tell you that I am right, you are wrong, or anything like that. This is simply to educate and provide perspective on why I believe the way I do. I felt the need to make this video due to some comments I got as well as due to real life factors. I am most familiar with Christianity, so this will be where a majority of my talking points come from, and where I focus most of this video on. But I have also studied various Eastern religions as well during my time in college, so I might end up using examples from them also. I was raised very Christian and was Christian my whole childhood and a few years of adulthood. No specific denomination, as we went to a variety of different churches who were all Christian, but had some differences in beliefs based upon denomination. Upon going to college, I studied a lot of Eastern religions with a skepticism that existed for those religions, but not my own. This skepticism went even past the classroom. I remember arguing with Mormon missionaries within my home because I was highly skeptical of the texts and histories I was being presented involving Joseph Smith. Yet I did not take the time to be skeptical of my own faith, and once I finally did, I found reason after reason that made me come to the conclusion I'm an agnostic. Being an agnostic simply means you aren't sure what's true and what isn't, and I truly do not know the answers. I also believe no one else does, despite what they claim. The other reason I use the word agnostic instead of atheist is because words have power. I have seen people lose all rationality and critical thinking skills when words like atheist are used, and I would prefer that they actually listen to what I have to say. Despite this, I would say a more correct title for me is Agnostic Atheist, which to me simply means, well, I do not know if there is a God. I find it unlikely. Now, do I hope I am wrong and that there is a God or that a God exists? Yeah, kinda, to be honest. But from what I have seen and understand currently, I do not know if that's the case. And if it were, I do not know if I could follow the Christian God. Whether religious or not, you are an atheist in a sense. Comedian Ricky Gervais sums it up well, saying, "You don't believe in 2,999 gods, and I don't believe in just one more."
So, you believe in one God, I assume?
In three persons, but go ahead.
Okay, so you believe... Okay. So... But there are about 3,000 to choose from that have been, people who believe in...
I've done some reading, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So basically, you believe in... You deny one less God than I do. You don't believe in 2,999 gods, and I don't believe in just one more.
But you don't know that.
Well...
You're just believing Stephen Hawking, and that's a matter of faith in his abilities.
Yes.
You don't know it yourself. You're accepting that because someone told you.
Yeah, well, but science is constantly proved all the time. You see, if we take something like any fiction, in any holy book, in any other fiction, and destroyed it, okay, in 1,000 years' time, that wouldn't come back just as it was. Yes. Whereas if we took every science book, right, and every fact, and destroyed them all, in 1,000 years, they'd all be back, because all the same tests would be the same result.
That's good. That's really good.
So unless you believe in, all gods, then you have some atheism in you, and that's not a bad thing. When I was a Christian, I was taught that there was only one true religion, and that's Christianity. Some Christians said it was not okay to doubt. Others said it is okay to doubt. Everyone has doubts, but that's why you gotta have faith. To them, doubts were fine as long as you eventually came to the correct conclusion, which in their case was Christianity. A majority of who I knew growing up were also Christian, and while this did not lead to me being estranged to all of them, my atheism did make me estranged to most of them. Some of them by their choice and some of them by mine. And I had lived in such a collective bubble of people believing the same thing that when I was discovering that what I thought to be true was not, it was devastating. Even attempting to discuss it with most of them was like talking to a wall. The most helpful ones I talked to were often the ones who could say, I don't know, and I don't have all the answers. And I appreciated that far more than what I often got, which was usually barely related ramblings of other Christians attempting to seem smart by saying a lot, but not really answering my questions. And this happened at a weird time in my life when I started to actually figure out who I was and try to be that, rather than being stuck as who people wanted me to be. My brain seemed to break as thing after thing I thought to be true turned out to not be. I realized I was not happy. I was not a good person, and I had been living a lie. Month after month, my perspectives changed, and the more I knew, the more I realized how much I didn't know. One of the many things that broke within my brain at the time that I had to relearn and unlearn to get fixed within my head was religion. And the first stepping stone for me not believing in Christianity was the Bible itself. Growing up, I was taught that the Bible is the infallible Word of God, and that, while written by man, it was divinely inspired as to be true. Unfortunately, I do not believe this to be the case anymore. The Bible was not always canonized. Many different books and texts were seen as important to Christians, and what was canon could vary. In the time of the early Christians, most people could not read and write. Those who could read would read to the masses, and those who could write would have to hand copy things. This was before the printing press, and it was not like today where if we both had the same book, it would be exactly the same copy. Copies back then could have differences. Sometimes it was the scribes copying, sometimes it was slaves copying, and just because they could read what they copied didn't mean they fully comprehended what it was. More like an attempted tracing at times. And you try to copy large amounts of text by hand and not make mistakes. It happens, and then the mistakes get copied by a person who copies the copy, and then that person copies the copy and makes another mistake, and so on and so forth. If you've ever played the children's game Telephone, you can see why this would be an issue. In the game, you whisper something to someone, and then they whisper it to someone else, and by the end, the last person may have heard something completely different than what the first person said. It's a lot like that. If one person makes a mistake, every copy made next will have that mistake. If one person purposely changes something with good or bad intentions, the subsequent copy will have those changes, and all copies of the copy will too. And often, it can be an honest mistake. I mean, again, imagine having to copy a whole book by hand. At some point you could get bored, or slip up on where a word should go. There's a lot of things that can happen. Some things were even added later into the books. The oldest copies of John didn't have the story of the writing in the sand and the adulteress who they tried to get Jesus to stone. These were added in later at some point. The entire last 12 verses of Mark are also not in our oldest versions of Mark. This is the section in which a resurrected Jesus returns to the disciples. Now, why were they added? Should they be kept? This is a matter of debate. But what does stand true is they were not in our oldest copies and were at some point added in later and then massively copied with them in. For more on this and other passages that were added, changed, or removed, you can read the book Misquoting Jesus by Bart D. Ehrman, which is a good read on how scripture started one way and ended up another. Or for those who would like to stay on YouTube, Trey the Explainer has a 2-part episode on YouTube talking about 10 changes within the Bible, and I find this to also be a very good video. Also, the Bible was not originally in English. When you translate from one language to another, some things get lost within translation. Maybe the language doesn't have the right words, or maybe it means something different, or the grammar or sentence structure is different, but changes are bound to happen. Even beyond that, what books were and weren't canon could depend upon who was in power at the time. The modern-day current Bible has 66 books. Around the same time these 66 books were circulating, so were many others that were also taken as canon. What was even canon for Christianity varied and was debated for a long time through councils and other various means. And even today, we don't still 100% agree on the amount. That 66 books was once 80. The Catholic Bible has 73 books instead of 66. Judaism doesn't use the New Testament. The Church of the Latter-day Saints includes the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. And some Christians accept the Apocrypha, while others don't. Sure, most Bibles you pick up will probably have the 66 books, but how are we for sure that is the correct number? How do we know we didn't omit ones that should be there, or keep ones that shouldn't? How do we know the 66 is correct and not the 73, or possibly even more? What of really old texts that we once treated like canon but are no longer canon? Sure, a lot of them I can see why they wouldn't be included, but some of them I have more trouble seeing. The point is, the Bible is not the infallible word of God. It is messy. And while it is a good approximation of the originals we have, I don't think we should hang on every word, every sentence, and use it to interpret how to live our life. To me, it is not a book for that. It is a book that should be handled with some amount of skepticism, and the complexity of it should be more widely taught to those who believe. Passages were changed in ways that removed or diminished the roles women had in the Bible. The Gospels were written 40 to 60 years after Jesus' death, and I would hope that you would show some skepticism to me writing about an event that happened 60 years ago. We aren't even sure if the books are written by who they say they are written by. Did Luke write Luke? And the present 66 book Bible also has different translations out as well, like the King James, the NIV, the NLT, and so on. Which books were chosen? How many gods there are? Are Jesus and God the same? Is God man or God, or is he both? These are some of the many questions that were answered through various councils such as Nicaea and Chalcedon. These were people who decided these things. It is possible they got something wrong. After all, it was not everyone who agreed with their decisions. And I would say some of these have strong arguments for the other way around, from what is believed and decided upon this day. For example, some people don't believe Jesus is the Son of God. One argument is there are plenty of passages that did not present Jesus as Son of God. Let's take, for example, Mark 3:17, where Jesus is baptized, and the Lord says, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." In earlier Greek and Latin text, we actually have it say, "You are my Son, today I have begotten you," which in my mind, at that moment of the baptism, was the moment he was accepted as the child of God, the way Christians often are when they are baptized. Now, I have arguments against this, but the point is there are arguments for and against this. Now, there are old texts that still have the "whom I am well pleased" version as well, and honestly, from what I understand, either could be debated as being the true one. But which is it? We don't really know. And also, sometimes just because one text is older doesn't mean it is always the closest to the original. If I had one version and I had made one copy of it, and then I had another version and I made 100 copies of it, that means the 100 copies would be the ones that are more likely to survive today than that one copy. And that 100 copies might not be the best version. What if we find one that's 1,000 years old and one that's 1,500 years old? Does that mean the 1,500-year-old copy was right? It kind of depends who copied it. The 1,500-year-old one could be from a bad copy. There are a lot of factors to take in when figuring it out, and since we don't have the original text, we have to go with our closest approximation, which means our best guess, because we can't know for sure, only get closer to figuring out the more we know. Again, What I'm saying here is that I don't believe the Bible to be infallible, and one should probably not base their life upon it, or at least shouldn't take every word as if God himself decided it to be there. To me, the Bible is less of a book that gives me answers and more of a book that will give me questions. Plus, some of these stories from the Bible are pretty wild. Let's take Noah's Ark, for example. So with Noah, we're saying he has all those animals on an ark, which is already crazy, but he also has hundreds and thousands of pounds of food to feed them, and they're all not going to eat each other, and the ark is also going to go high above the mountains. At being that high, these animals are somehow not going to freeze. And I've also worked with fish, and they are fickle, and they need the water just right at all times for them to survive. With a flood like this, you have all kinds of different issues. You have water pressure changes, pH level changes, salt and fresh water mixing. You're looking at dead fish, dead animals, and very cold temperatures for those on the ark. Plus, afterward, what will the animals eat? If a carnivorous animal, like a lion, eats an animal, then that species is going to go extinct. Not to mention, 2 of every kind of animal is not enough to continue a species. And sure, you could say that it's magic or the Bible isn't literal or whatever, but trust me, a lot of people take it literally. And even for the ones that don't, it's the story of a lot of people being drowned in a flood. Something I really wouldn't think you'd want on the wall above your newborn baby's crib. Also, it's not like this story was the first version used. Before Genesis, it was used in other stories, myths, and religions. And one of my favorites, if not my favorite ancient story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. There is a flood caused by gods to destroy mankind, and many other similarities to the Noah's Ark story within that story. And this came before Noah's Ark. And even before the Epic of Gilgamesh, there is another older story, the Epic of Atrahasis. And that one I haven't read, but that's another flood story. All this to say that some of the stories contained within the Bible were not always original. And while I'm not claiming them to be the exact stories, I am more claiming that Noah's story of God sending a flood and killing everyone but him, and then having him build an ark to survive, is borrowed from other stories. It's less of an original work that should be taken as history, and more of a remix of a story with a funky spin on it. And it's not like it ended there either. The Hindu story of Manu in the Great Flood pulls from this story as well, and I'm sure that many stories after also borrow from Noah's Ark. So if you're Hindu, that story is not the original. If you are Christian, that story is not the original, and that's okay. In this day and age, what story even is original, am I right? The basic summary of what I'm saying is we should show skepticism towards these texts and not just blindly believe them. I could go into this a lot more, but I feel like I've made my point. And honestly, all of these points I've made so far could be their own video. But I also don't want to become a channel that only talks about religion because that sounds stressful, and I'd like to keep to my video games. Before we move on, let me also point out that not everything taught by Christians is even biblical. My favorite one being that God will never give you more than you can handle. Not only is this not in the Bible, but it doesn't even hold up with the actual teaching within the church. For example, how all the disciples died after Christ, and many were martyrs and crucified. Would that not be giving them more than they can handle? I would think it would. Also, have you ever looked into that claim? It's made quite often in the Christian church because why would someone die for a lie, right? So it has to be true. Well, there are a ton of arguments against it, but rather than even getting started on those, I'm going to point out that the disciples' deaths are not only not biblical, but many of the sources are not even from the books Christians choose to believe. Peter asked to be crucified upside down because he wasn't worthy of right side up like Jesus. This comes from the Acts of Peter, an apocrypha book that the 66-book Bible many use doesn't have. Philip asked to be crucified upside down because he wasn't worthy of the right side up like Jesus. This comes from the Acts of Philip. a Gnostic book that you would really think Christians would want to avoid. And I said agnostic, not agnostic. Those are different. Andrew asked to be crucified on an X-shaped cross because he wasn't worthy of the regular shaped cross like Jesus. This comes from Acts of Andrew, yet another apocrypha book chosen not to be within the 66-book Bible. What I am saying here is if we decided to have those not be canon, why pick and choose when and when they aren't canon? To make matters more unbelievable, I could not find credible records of Romans who crucified in any other way than the normal way, nor did I find any proof of them asking or allowing requests to be fulfilled on how you could die. You didn't really pick, it was your execution the Romans picked. You asking to be crucified on an X-shaped cross or upside down would have likely done nothing. Now I know all of what I'm talking about could be expanded upon, so if you want to learn more on this topic, Dark Matter 2525 has a video called Did the Apostles Die for a Lie?, in which he goes through the accounts and their sources. He is a respectable and very wise man, far smarter than me, and I have learned a great deal from him. This topic, as well as many others I've discussed here, or will discuss later on in this video, I'm sure he has videos on, as his whole channel is about atheism. This is obviously not required, it's just that the subjects of these videos have a lot more to expand upon, and this is more of a short summary and various examples of talking points in which could be expanded upon, so I'd like to give you sources for you to do so if you so desired. Now let's hop into a new chapter and talk about the afterlife and God. Within Christianity, it is believed in order to go to heaven, you must accept Christ, and those who don't will go to hell. So there are two options, heaven and hell. It's not a gamble. It's a safe bet. Why would I not want to go to the good one? Why not just believe in God to be safe from hell? If God is real, then you have everything to gain and everything to lose. If God is not real, you really don't lose much at all, so it's safer to believe in God. This is called Pascal's wager. There are issues with this though, such as those aren't the only two options. What of purgatory, nirvana, moksha, reincarnation, etc.? What if it is nothing? What if it's something we haven't thought of or even discovered? What if by worshiping the wrong God this whole time we are making the correct God angry? There are actually a huge list of things God in the afterlife could or could not be. It is not just this 50-50 choice presented. You say, sure, but mine is the right one. I know it, I have faith, and hey, that's great. But again, there are others who are just as convinced of their religions. And who's to say they are wrong simply because you believe yourself to be right? Also, you can't make someone just believe something. I can claim all day that I think pumpkins can be used as a vacuum. But not only can I not prove pumpkins can be used as a vacuum, but I can't just believe that, no matter how hard I try. What you believe isn't something you can switch on and off. You can't just turn that on and off. You have to actually believe that. So in Pascal's wager, I would just be saying God is real, but I can't force myself to just believe it. Now, some people have had near-death experiences where they claim to have seen heaven or hell, and so that's got to be proof that those are real, right? Well, not really. There are others who have also seen nothing. There are those who have seen some wild things, and those who believe themselves to be reincarnated, and all of them believe that they are correct. Is just one correct? Are multiple correct? What about all of them? Or none of them? These are also non-verifiable experiences. How can I know if you have actually seen heaven? How could you know if I have actually seen hell? If I told you that I saw aliens after a near-death experience, the only one who would know if I actually saw aliens would be me. You could not verify that, and you could believe or doubt me, but you couldn't know for sure. You weren't there. The mind is a wild thing. Think of all the crazy things you see when you dream. You don't think when you have a near-death experience you might not see some crazy things? It doesn't mean that it was real. Now, I will say the reincarnation one is slightly more verifiable. It doesn't mean that's what I believe in. That's not what I'm saying. Just that in some circumstances, there are ways to test it. For example, each Dalai Lama upon his death, the search for the new one begins, where babies and small children are tested by monks who see visions of where a child may be located and test them with items important to the previous Dalai Lama to see if a child can recognize it. If the child can recognize it and has some sort of attachment to the items that the previous Dalai Lama had, then they might be chosen as the reincarnation of the new Dalai Lama. And just some cool facts about the Legend of Korra real quick, which is not a spiritual text, it is a kid's cartoon, but the Avatar is located in a similar way, and her trainer is named Tenzin, which happens to be our current Dalai Lama's name, so I think that's pretty cool. Now, based upon the Dalai Lama's current situation, I am unsure of how the next one will be chosen. However, the point remains that that is a way to test if reincarnation is real. Now, whether this is an accurate test or a faulty test, for sure could be debated. There are many issues with this test, such as more than one child candidate, and figuring out which one is truly the one, or how do we know these visions are accurate, and there's a lot of things to question. But those who truly believe it, the same as those who believe in heaven and those who believe in hell truly believe in those. So why should I believe one, but not the other, when I'm not sure either can actually be proved to me? At least with the reincarnation, I can sorta test it, even if I think there are faults with the test. I've had people tell me they are reincarnated and tell me about their past life. And that really means as much to me as someone who tells me that they have been to heaven or hell. I can hear them out, but I'm going to have a healthy amount of skepticism. And it's not me calling them a liar or trying to change their mind or saying, oh, I actually believe you. It's just me listening and using critical thinking skills regarding what they said. Now, if for some reason I was to find out heaven is real, I'd want to go, right? I'm not even sure about that. See, if we jump into the Christian God yet again, and we're going to do that because that's the one I know best, God has given us two options. He has given us heaven and he has given us hell. Now, there are issues with this. First off, this isn't even logical, fair, or sound judgment. I could create a better system for people off the top of my head, and I am human. Let's not pretend this is beyond our understanding to justify this, because it is within your understanding. It is not that complicated, so let's dive into this a little. To get to heaven, we have to accept Jesus into our heart and believe in him. And that's really it. Some Christians say you also need to turn around with your life and live better than before, which would be nice. However, the main thing is just that you do believe in God now. What this means is no matter the crime, no matter the acts of the person, if in their last moments they were a follower of Christ, they will be in heaven. Rapist, heaven. Murderer, heaven. As long as in their last moments they accept Jesus, they get heaven. Now, exactly how is that just and fair? If someone went out and killed your relative, or your friend, or your pet, would you not want justice for them? How would you feel if not only did the person get off just because they knew the judge, but that the person got to live in the same area as you as a reward for being buddies with the judge? Let's say it was me. Let's say I killed someone you care about, and then the judge let me go because I was buddies with the judge. I said, you know what, judge? I like you. I want to be like you. I'm going to follow you. And the judge said, you know what? Everything you've ever done, forgiven. Would you not feel this was an unfair judge? Would you not feel this is an unfair system? Why act like it is different because it is God? Now, let me flip it a little bit. Think of the person you hate most. I know a few who I can't stand. But let me ask you, would you want them to burn for all eternity? And think about that, because eternity is a long time. A really long time. Like, I can only sort of grasp how long that is, but not really. Imagine the worst pain you have been in forever. I don't know about you, but even the people I hate, the ones who I think deserve the worst, I don't think would deserve that. Like, sure, maybe some punishment, but forever? That's insane. That neither helps teach or rehabilitates a person, nor is it humane for a so-called loving God. And some of these people to be sent to hell have committed far lesser acts. Does a thief deserve the same punishment as a serial rapist? Does a liar deserve the same punishment as a serial killer? Does someone born in an area where they have never heard of Jesus deserve the same punishment as someone who commits genocide? I would argue no, and any judge who thinks yes, I would say is insane. Not to mention if the genocide guy decided to be buddies with the judge, he's just off free now. Why not have different layers of punishment for different acts? Why not have different layers of rewards for different acts? I hear that God doesn't want to send us to hell, and great, then he doesn't have to. He can do that. If he is omnipotent and all-powerful, and he can do anything, he could also just not send us to hell. He could do that. Some religions actually have, like, different levels of things, like a purgatory, and layers of heaven and hell. And that feels a lot more fair to me. I think the caste system is an absolutely abysmal and awful system. I think the idea of being reincarnated in a better or worse place based on my actions, however, sounds more fair than what the Christian God has chosen. One argument I hear too often is that it is us who makes the choice, and I would argue that's not even a choice, and are you insane? It's more of a threat you have to accept under duress. I would also argue in other contexts you would not argue the same thing, but again make an exception for God. If I tell you to give me your money, or I will shoot you, is that not a threat? If I tell you, you gotta date me or I'll hurt you, is that not a threat? If I tell you to worship me or I'll burn you alive, is that not a threat? Why is God saying follow him or burn in hell not a threat? It is. I don't know about you, but I don't have to tell my friends there will be painful consequences if they stop being my friend. That is not okay behavior. And then could I know if they were my friend because they liked me, or if they were my friend because I placed them in a circumstance where they had no choice or else? Tell me exactly how that is a choice. Is it a choice because you get to pick? How is it okay for God, but not okay in these other circumstances? And do think about this for a second. From my perspective, this is a God who is willing to let people burn forever. And my reward for picking him is I get to worship him forever. Why would I want to do that? It's basically also a punishment in my mind, like lesser, but still. So if I say, hey, hang out with me and constantly tell me how great I am, and well, you do know that in my basement I have people who chose not to be my friend, and they're being tortured. Is that even a relationship you'd want to have with me? And we have not even touched on predestination yet. The Atheist Experience actually has a pretty good video on kind of what I was talking about. Let me go ahead and play a clip.
That's what I'm asking you. If I tell my wife, if you don't love me, I'm going to set you on fire, does she have a choice? And also, am I a loving, good husband? Those are two questions I want you to answer.
If you set her on fire, then you never loved her to begin with.
And if God sends us to hell, he never loved us to begin with.
Wrong.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
God does love you.
Let me ask you a question, Eric, and this is a genuine question. Just yes or no. This is not a gotcha. I just genuinely want to know. Do you have anyone in your life that you genuinely love with all your heart?
Yeah.
What would that person have to do for you to condone them being tortured for all eternity?
what would that person have to do?
What choice would they have to make?
What choices would that person have to make for you to be like, you know what, the best thing could happen right now is that you get tortured forever. That would be a really good thing. What would cause you to make that choice, that decision?
Nothing.
Yeah, me too.
You might be more moral than God.
It sounds like you are. It sounds like you're a lot of a better person than God is, because there's not a single thing my wife could possibly do that would make me want her to be hurt.
Now I do get it. Not everyone wants to die. I know I don't. And you also have people you care about. It's nice to know there is a heaven because it's supposed to be a good place for you and them to go. But again, we go back to how do we know it's real? If I tell you I can sell you a mansion, would you not want to see the mansion before you buy? If I tell you I'll sell you a car, would you not want to make sure that it is what I say it is before you buy? And if there was no way to show you, and I told you to just have faith that I had this mansion or this car, would you not be skeptical? Would you not think this was a scam of some sort? We can't see heaven, we don't know it's real, and we are being asked to believe. And while sure the alternative is not believing, and that is bleak, we still can't know. I, for one, would love to just believe in an afterlife, but you can't just force a belief. Then I'm pretending to believe instead of actually believing, and why would I believe when there's no way to know until it's too late? Also, I can't change my decision. Death is the cutoff for some reason, despite being unable to verify and validate until then. And why are we redeemable, but let's say Satan, for example, isn't? What makes God all loving to us, but when an angel messes up, it's unforgivable? It's almost like we need a villain. To me, the afterlife is used as a tactic to convert followers, one with an unverifiable reward and one that is a scare tactic with an unverifiable threat. These threats are actually what made me decide to make this video. See, growing up, I went to a multitude of churches and religious groups, and while some were far more normal, I guess I'd say, than others, some were insane and very cult-like. I made a video discussing a movie called M1028, which is a low-budget Christian horror film we watched at a youth group. And this video I made was less of an informational video and more of a poking fun at it kind of video, discussing how the film was, in my opinion, a scare tactic to get kids to be so afraid of hell they would accept Jesus. This was far from the only example I have, but this is the one I talked about for that video. And as a silly video targeted more towards my audience, I did not feel the need to explain a bunch of things. However, it seemed to hit the Christian demographic, which was not my target audience, and a barrage of comments came in that bothered me. A quick summary of the film is that a girl disobeys her parents and lies to them to go to a party where she has a near-death experience, and she experiences hell until she is resuscitated by the ambulance. With that being said, let's jump into these comments, and we will return to the video. Alright, so we got 140 comments. I'm probably not going to read all of them, but let's go ahead and get into some of them. Found this movie at age 39. This is not a joke. There is a reason people don't joke about this. Mocking God is not something to do either. It's biblical. I'm not sure whether I mocked God in this video or not. I know I have mocked God, so I'm not going to say, oh, I didn't mock God. Them saying it's biblical doesn't mean anything to me, though. I could say, hey, this was in the book, The Chronicles of Narnia, so don't mock Aslan. What? Had 2 visions of hell, and I know God's goodness. I know what price Jesus paid on the cross. God loves us. All I can say is those who mock God will know the truth in the end. Again, I don't remember if I did or not in the video, but this is the second person saying that now, so I'm gonna guess I did. But again, this also feels like a threat. Those who mock God will know the truth in the end. Okay. If hell is a legitimate place, do you think what you just said there is going to make me go, oh, alright, those who mock God will know the truth in the end? Again, I could say the same thing. Those who mock Hinduism, you're gonna find out that because you weren't living by that way, you'll be reincarnated in a different way. Whoa, was that did nothing to you? It did nothing to me too. God doesn't send anybody to hell. He gives you what you choose. He says in Revelation that he is coming quickly, and reward is with him. If you choose not to serve him, that is your reward. The Bible also says the wages of sin is death. So choose Christ so you can live. Be blessed. We got 16. I replied to it too. And I basically just kind of went through my little thing that I've already went through with you guys. Other people responded and I just kind of left that be. But in short, it was me basically saying the whole, like, you don't choose heaven or hell. That isn't a choice. Just like getting mugged, you can choose to give is this really a full choice? You get to give him your wallet or get shot. A loving person doesn't give you that kind of ultimatum. And 21 likes. This isn't a movie. It's based on a true story. Like, okay, what are these? Amen, seriously, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. There's a lot of movies that are based on a true story, but that doesn't make them true. That's why it says based on a true story. And it's saying this isn't just a movie. That is exactly what it is. Just because you believe hell is real, just because you believe people have been to hell, we don't even have proof that happened. At least me watching, let's say, Saving Private Ryan, I have proof World War II happened. Did I dislike all these? Let me go ahead and get around to disliking these. This person says they were forced to watch this when they were 12, and they can confirm it left lasting traumas for them. And I already liked this and talked to them and whatnot. I'm more so looking at the negative ones that I'm commenting on, because I'm pretty sure I already commented on the positive ones. Too many negative ones started coming in, and I said, okay, I guess I have to address this as a video. Hell wasn't created for us. It was created for Lucifer and his followers. This is a stupid and irrelevant point. Let's say it is created for Lucifer and his followers. We're still going there. So it really, according to Christianity, the people who aren't following Christ are still going there, regardless of if it was created for Lucifer and his followers. If I made a bomb for a country, and then I took that bomb and blew up a whole bunch of other countries, regardless that it was meant for a different country, it was still used on these other countries. Does that make sense? It was still bad. God doesn't send you to hell. We already talked about this. You punch your own ticket. Why would anyone pay attention to the opinion of an unbeliever? Oh, you got me there. This is extra stupid. Why would anyone pay attention to the opinion of someone who isn't my own current opinion? I bet you're a real deep thinker, Daryl Parks. Looks like I already disliked this one. Are you willing to gamble your soul away? I've already talked about how it's not gambling your soul away. It is a gamble, but everything you do is a gamble. Even you following Christ is a gamble, assuming that's the correct religion. This is not a joke. The next second is not promised to you at all. SMH. Once you breathe your last breath, if you're not right with Jesus, there are no negotiations. I'll continue to pray for your salvation. I highly doubt it, man. You'll continue to pray that I think the same way you do. And I'm sure you don't even pray for that, man. This is just I'm sorry, woman. I'm sure this is just kind of like, when you're in church and they pray and they're like, I just pray that this person finds his way and stops doing this, this, and this. And you're in the prayer circle listening to them say this about you, and you're just like, okay, this is just a passive-aggressive way of saying you don't like the thing I did. Just say that to me. Don't put God as some sort of weird middleman where you're like, oh, I pray this. It's your choice. Yeah, I've heard that one before. There is a hell. 250 scriptures in the Bible warning us about hell. I don't know about that. I'd have to check that one. It's not because she went to a party. Why she's in hell is because she didn't repent with all her heart and ask Jesus to come live in her and teach me your ways. Is why she went to hell. I think what she's saying is The reason she went to hell is because she didn't accept Jesus, not because she went to a party. This is correct in this context, yeah, but even still, she goes to hell because she went to a party, and at that party met people that caused the accident that made her go to hell. I don't know what to say about this one. I feel like I've already answered these kinds of things before. At this point, I'm just repeating myself. I'm wasting my time. When it is game over, you can't restart and make better choices. If you are in hell, it's a one-way ticket. You can't get out. Yeah, and is that not stupid? This is a fair, just God who decided, yeah, forever? He sentenced everyone to life, but more than to life, to like everlasting life. That's ridiculous. We don't have a single judge here who has ever been able to do that. The choices you make now will determine your destiny. I am sure no one wants to go there. And you are correct. Life is so short, so choose wisely. If it was absolutely 100% obvious that it was the Christian God, I would be far more likely to choose, and I'm sure so many other people would too. But it is not that clear. It is not that black and white. And I'm not discounting you. You are allowed to believe in Jesus, Gemini 1164, but you also need to respect that I don't. If you are in hell, it's a one-way ticket. That's great, man. And if I send you to the plane of oblivion to fight Mehrus Dagon, that's a one-way ticket, man. What, you're not scared of that? Okay. Whew. The plot itself is kind of corny. The story itself is based on a real girl's experience. It is not a matter of her sneaking out to which to go to a party to leave family drama that makes her end up in hell. Yeah, we already discussed this. It's the fact she got shot in the head, and if you're in teenage, which is the starting age range of accountability, and have not saved, you're going to face that reality. Kids all the way... my comments really need to work on making sure they're saying things. Kids all the way down to newborn are safe in his kingdom. That completely depends on the religion, man. There's a lot, even in Christianity, this still completes on the religion. Some people believe that that's not the case. There's a reason newborns are baptized, and that is for that exact reason. The age of accountability is the basic reality when we as humans have to start facing that choice to be on the side of good or evil. Teenagers need to see it because at that age they're straight up stubborn, like this guy isn't, and you need to face up to the facts because it's a real place. What fact? We can't see this. If I want to go to Montana, I can go to Montana. That's how I know it's a real place. If I want to fly to Japan, I can fly to Japan. That's how I know it's a real place. If I want to go to heaven or hell, I just gotta die and assume that I'm gonna go there. What facts, Mr. Writing facts in all caps? Kids like 11 and below are too young. Hell exists because if you choose out of free will... Oh my god. We've discussed all this. Hell exists because if you choose out of free will to not want to be with him, then that's what you get. It's a place completely absent of everything he is and has. Absent of actual light. In hell, it's complete darkness. This was always an interesting thing to me because he isn't wrong based on biblical stuff. It is in a place of absolute darkness, but also it's supposed to be a place of fire. So how do you have fire and absence of light? I think maybe there's like a cool fire. I don't know. That like is somehow not light, or you just like eternally burn inside. I really don't know. But hell's different depending on all sorts of different depictions. Anyway, eternal suffering, you're literally choosing emptiness, darkness, and pain. Yes, that's what I'm choosing. That's what I picked, obviously. Because it's not where he lives. You can't just walk up to the front door of a person's mansion and say, hey, I don't know you and I don't like you at all. to be honest, but can I move in with you as a stooper? No one in their right mind who owns a house on private property is going to accept that. You have to have built a full trustworthy relationship with them, and foremost, let alone allow you to camp on their land. It's practically holy principle. In regards to that, I'm not going to him and saying, hey, can I camp there? In this actual circumstance, there are people telling me there is that mansion there, and I can go up to that mansion and knock on the door and he'll let me in. But upon looking there, I don't see a mansion. I don't see anything. People are just telling me there is a mansion, but there isn't anything there for me to see. So of course I'm not going to go there. And then they get mad at me and tell me if I don't believe there's a mansion, bad things are going to happen. Okay then. On one final note, where else are you going to put absolute criminals throughout time who we all say deserve hell for their crimes? There aren't many people, if any, that I would say deserve eternal torture. There's definitely people who I think are very bad, who definitely deserve some form of punishment, indeed, but I don't think you are grasping eternalness, I don't think you're grasping that, because I hate being in large sums of pain for long periods of time. I can't imagine what it would be like forever. And there is, as much as I hate certain people, there is no one I can think of at all that deserves that forever. So I also don't care about your final note. May God have mercy on your soul. Okay. May Shiva have mercy on yours. May the force be not with you, Cindy. Wow, hope that really did something. This is the biggest love message you could ever receive. Hopefully these people will stop jabbering about their backforged philosophy. Hell is very, very real. Okay, and without Christ, you're going there, believe it or not. Okay, I don't know that I even want to continue reading your... Okay, I'm going to, though. I saw Jude 1:6 with my own eyes. I'm not sure which one that is. I guess we'll look that up. It describes angels who abandoned their proper place of authority are now held in darkness awaiting judgment. Sure you did. Sure you saw that. What I saw... My God, please, just pay attention to what you're writing to me. What I saw is pale incomprehensible. Major PTSD from these supernatural encounters. Flaming fire taking vengeance on those who do not know God, and on those who do not obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. 9 these shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power. Keep laughing. There will be a day where all is turned into tears guaranteed. You just are like, I can't wait till he gets what he's coming to him because I've been right and he is wrong. Okay then. What a worthless message. Well, I hope it isn't late for any of you who don't believe when you get your tickets. What's up with these tickets? Is God a conductor? This is just a positive message from an actual friend. This guy's saying nice things to me. This one says, God doesn't torment people. Okay, we've already talked about this. Hell was prepared for the God of the world. He's talking about Satan here. Someone to judge God for the attributes of his adversary. That's not even close to what's happening. Moving on. That's a positive thing. I remember this one. This one's like a more legitimate question. This is actually one of the only legitimate questions I got from like a Christian person, and wasn't just this, hey, did you know you're going to hell? Hey bro, my name is Jeff, and I'm one of those kids that saw this movie and cried. That movie scared the fuck out of me. I did receive Jesus. That was a long, long time ago. Between then and now, I've learned that there are ways to test if this is true or not. I've looked at things like proof that God wrote the Bible, God did not write the Bible. People wrote the Bible. It is said that it is divinely inspired by God. And this can vary. Some people say it is inspired, meaning it is just inspired, which is more believable to me, but others think it is infallible and perfect, which I am not going to agree with whatsoever. Proof that God wrote the Bible, things like prophecies, etc. There are 2,000 prophecies in the Bible, and every single one came true. 200% perfectly. Okay. I don't know how many prophecies there are in the Bible. I don't know that every single one of them came true. I'd have to look into this claim. It's definitely not 200%. If all of them came true, that's 100%, but that's just me being a dumb little stickler. I guess let me finish reading this before I respond, I guess. Man can't do that. This is untrue. Even though this Bible has been attacked for thousands of years, I'm convinced that everything in it and all that is in that movie is true. That's my 2 cents. Hope all is well. Have a good day, bro. And it looks like I liked this one, which I'm going to, because even though I disagree with this guy, I feel like he came at it respectfully. I feel like he was actually being thoughtful. He was actually asking questions. He wasn't just saying, go to hell. The Simpsons has a ton of prophecies that has come true. Should I be following The Simpsons? There are other spiritual people who are alive today who make tons of predictions, and some of their prophecies come true. Should I be following them? One of the things is, A, their prophecies don't come true, and B, sometimes the way their prophecies come true is retroactively. If I write about 9/11 in this year, and then say that I actually wrote that in 2000 before 9/11 happened, anyone who believes that I wrote it in 2000 will be like, wow, he had a prophecy and did that. But that doesn't mean I actually did do that. And a lot of the books of the Bible are written far after the actual events of them happened. Off the top of my head, Daniel in particular, I know, but I don't know. I'd have to go through like every prophecy, and I feel like that would take a while. And hey, maybe some of them did come true, but I don't know about this whole 2000 thing. I'm also not discrediting this. This is something I'd have to actually look into. Sorry that you believe that, but hell is real. Okay, well, I'm sorry that you believe hell is real. Loony as a clown. So, this person asked me about agony. This one, agony is a game, by the way. Hell is no joke. That's what hell was like for her. Hope your hell is a nice place. That's just hell. Yeah, sure. Okay. I hope hell is a nice place, too. I hope, as Breathe Carolina says, hell is what you make it. As a horror movie, it's actually pretty good, as in well put together and well played out. It is actually kind of put together a little well. I was impressed by some of the indie stuff. I don't think it's a good movie whatsoever, but I was a little impressed based on the low budget. So I give this guy a like up, yeah. Especially from a Christian film, because they're usually not good. There's a couple good ones. Prince of Egypt comes to mind as like one of the greatest movies ever, but for the most part, Christian movies not great. Yes, Yahweh is all loving, but he doesn't love your sinful ways. He means ways. It's like if a mother raises their son, wrong there, and teach him right from wrong. Emoji. I don't know that I even want to continue reading this. That's kind of actually annoying me. I will though, because I don't want somebody to go, oh, he got you there and you didn't respond to it. So, is given all the love and compassion, but as the kid grows up, he becomes a murderer and goes to prison. Hold on, what is happening here? I need to reread what's happening. It's like if a mother raises her son to teach him right from wrong. Okay, so she's saying a mother has a son, she raised him correctly, but the kid becomes a murderer and goes to prison. She's going to ask, what happened to you? I gave you all the love and taught you right from wrong. She's not at fault for his actions. He had free will to do what he wanted. And that's what God... Okay, so it's not that situation actually whatsoever. Okay? So, yeah, let's say a mother did that and the son went and did that and then we put him in jail. Or we gave him the death penalty or something, right? It's not that situation at all. As these other people have stated, it wasn't the actual crimes that were committed. It wasn't her going to a party and disobeying her parents, which is not a crime. It wasn't those things. It was that she didn't know God and accept God. So, actually, what would be happening here is the mother raises her son, teaches him right from wrong, gives him love and compassion, but the kid grows up and doesn't meet the right people. He didn't meet the right person. He didn't start following and worshiping the right person, and so he burns forever. Anyway, she's going to ask him, what happened to you? I gave you all the love and thought you were... Okay, this is supposed to be taught, but that's not what it says. And so it keeps tripping me up. She is not at fault for his actions. I agree, and he had free will to do as he wanted. Sure, and that's what God does. He loves you and lets you decide what you want to do. Depending on if we believe in predestination or not. By your fruits you will know the difference from a sinner and a believer. So yes, Yahweh is all loving, but he is also wrath to those who choose not to believe him will pay in hell with the God of this world. I don't even know that that's worth talking about. No one goes into hell blindfolded. This movie's based on a true story. Okay, if you choose to deny God, you are choosing to go to hell for eternity. Existence without God is hell. I've already discussed all that stuff. I pray for you, Xero. I think I'm done with that one. I don't need your passive-aggressive, I pray for you, but you're wrong because this, and this. Let's not move on and let's answer the thing. I pray for you, Xero. The elites of this world made sure we're comfortable in this existence. Why gamble with your eternity? We've already talked about that. Tomorrow isn't promised to any of us. There's proof of God's existence everywhere. Pick up the Bible and you'll see a lot has come to pass in life. Get right while you have time, please. God is not placing you there by his will. You have to refuse to repent for your sins and hold on to your hatred. You will have to refuse to repent for your sins and hold on to your hatred. No sinful thoughts are permitted in heaven. There's actually a lot I want to say about that one, but I feel like that would take a whole different video. Like, do you have free will in heaven if you cannot even think a sinful thought? Or are those thoughts just like removed from you? There are questions, but I feel like that's a different video. What I'm gonna go ahead and say here is bleh. That's what I'm gonna respond to that guy. For all have sinned and fell short of the glory of God, but for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. The choice to believe or not is a gift God gave us. I've already been through this. You are delusional, PSG, Sierra. I'm listening to this person. Is he talking about a different person or me? I'm listening to this person and he said that no God should allow anyone to go to hell. He must be talking about me. Okay, yes. I agree. No God should allow anyone to go to hell. The problem is God does not send anyone to hell. Okay, well, I've talked about this and he kind of does. We send ourselves to hell like our forefathers, Adam and Eve, the two of us. The two of them, I suppose, gave us free will. It might only be a story, but it's a story that will teach us free will. Moving on. This is a nice comment, I know. This one's saying that these comments are disgusting, which I agree. This is a friend of mine. This one says... This is probably a nice comment. This is from Biggie Chungus. This is another nice comment. This is another nice comment. I pray the Lord sends you an encounter today. God bless. What kind of weird threat is that? Well, I pray that Baphomet sends you an encounter today, huh? Nostalgia. This is another nice one. This is another nice one. This is someone saying, why are you gambling with eternity? We've been through that. To say there's no God, you don't know that. You're right, I don't. And neither do you. You never experienced the afterlife. You're right, I haven't. And neither have you, young Wolverine. This person claims their dad made this movie. And because I couldn't get proof, I didn't go into that anymore. So possibly, but I don't know anything more about that, and I didn't really feel like diving deeper into any of that, I guess. Whoa, okay. I had to translate this one. I can't promise this was the correct translation. It had to be translated by Google. Hell was not created for humanity. For that, Jesus came and sacrificed himself to cleanse your sins, because the wage of sin is death, but he is resurrected and conquered death so that you wouldn't have to die. Now, if people don't accept the free salvation, then you are all saying like the same things, but you're not actually doing any thinking. And I do challenge you to please do thinking. Do thinking. Then love is clear, as Jesus said. It is worse to reject knowing than to have ever known. Although as long as there is life, there is hope. You can laugh at me or whatever, I don't care. For some of these, I do wish to laugh at them. I do wish to mock them, and I'm like, ha. But for others of them, I feel more bad that they believe this way, because it is a scary way to live. And so is being an atheist. Believing there is nothing is also scary. I don't enjoy that. And I know you can't control what you believe. You just believe what you believe. I don't want there to be a hell. Not just for my sake, though. For these people, and even a lot of these people who are wishing me hell, I don't want that either. Actually, for all of them wishing me hell. Look, if they're bad people or whatever, they can have a punishment, but hell is ridiculous, man. Anyway, and this is just another nice comment. That's really it. Let's go ahead and end it there. Now, before we jump into predestination, let me really hammer home this point. Hell is used as a fear tactic, and yes, that movie was one. But at that same group, the youth leader locked kids into a dark room with screams playing to simulate hell, while only letting some kids be out with him to simulate heaven. And it's not like my church was the only one to do these kinds of things. There have been these events called the Hell Houses, and they started in Texas, and they are equivalent to a Christian haunted house designed to make you so afraid by the end you will want Jesus. The Good Christian Fun podcast has a pretty good episode on that if you want more information on that. The other day, I was burning a lot of old papers that I no longer needed, and the amount of weird shit and demons I saw that I had drawn back then as a kid was kind of disturbing. I even remember at one point I gave one of those everyone is going to hell type of stories that I spent time crafting to scare other teens, and the adults who heard it told me how great it was. But looking back on it, I suppose the biggest difference is if I tell you a scary story, then it is just a scary story. But if I tell you a scary story that involves you personally being tortured forever, and everyone around you agrees that it's true and that it will happen to you, this is no longer a story. This is now a fear tactic designed to manipulate and is a threat to your being. I can't even say I had good intentions at the time. It was more so regurgitating things that I had been taught in an attempt for approval, and I did not actually take into considerations what my actions were. Alright, so enough of that. Let's actually dive into predestination. Christians believe that God is all-powerful, omnipotent, and omnipresent. The importance of this here is that he knows everything. Now, the reason he didn't make make us into robots who just worship him is he wanted to give us the free will to worship him. So once again, it's either go to heaven or go to hell, and this is based on our free will, right? Well, predestination argues that because God knows everything, he already knows whether you are going to heaven or hell. This isn't a 100% believed by all Christians kind of thing. Even in Christianity, we have a whole bunch of differences in our beliefs. That's why we have different denominations and stuff. But there are plenty of Christians who do believe this, such as the Calvinist denomination. I guess here's my thoughts on that. If God already knows all things, then do we even have free will to begin with, or were our entire lives already decided before we even began? In which case that means that God created some of us just to go to hell. And how can he claim to not want us to go to hell if he knew that by creating us we would go there in the first place? How could you say God is not sending you to hell if he knew this whole time that by making you, you would go there anyway? If I knew for a fact that if I had a kid they would be tortured, I would elect not to have a kid out of love. What kind of loving God would make people go to hell? And if God isn't all-knowing, then that's a separate discussion that needs to be admitted, but I really never hear anyone admit that God doesn't know everything. I can't see him as the good guy and as an all-knowing guy. He can't give us free will and have our every move pre-decided. I feel like the only way he could be good is if there are some things he actually doesn't know and some things he actually cannot do. I heard someone tell me how thankful they are God saved them from a car accident. And yes, while I am glad she is alive, not only can I not know for sure that God was the one who saved her, but I have even more questions on why God would save her. Like, would that not be interfering with free will? Did he know this ahead of time and he planned to save her? Why not make it so there was no near-death accident in the first place? And also, why her over all the other people he didn't save from these car accidents? Why use his powers to save one woman from a car accident and not stop war or genocide or starvation or oppression or concentration camps or, lots of different things? So either he has his priorities out of whack, or he isn't all powerful. Or, in my opinion, he's probably not real. If he knows everything, and all this is according to his plan, what kind of sick, messed up, going nowhere plan is this? One of my good friends lost his son, and he's hurting in ways I can't even imagine, and I feel so bad. And God knew this was going to happen and he did nothing, but he stopped some car accident? I don't know about that. Sometimes bad things just happen and there is no reason, no lesson, no plan for why it happened. Sometimes things just happen, and that is a scary and a sad thought. This has been one of my first years where I have been lucky. For me, it's been a relatively calm year this time. But for friends, this year has been hell, and I've seen the awful, hard things they are going through, and I feel powerless to help. And I know if I had the power to, I would help, regardless of free will and all that jazz. This isn't karma or paying them back or God trying to teach them a lesson. This is just life. Just as I finally catch a break, I watch their whole worlds fall apart, and I want so badly to end their pain and suffering because I love them, and I cannot understand or even desire to follow a God who would want to send people to hell. I can't. One thing I've heard in church over and over again is that it's not a religion, it's a relationship, and what they mean by that is that they have an actual relationship with Jesus because they can talk directly to him, whereas in many other religions you need a middleman. And while that's a neat concept, if I talk to a friend, I expect a response, not pure silence. If I have a friend who can help, who it won't affect him in any negative way to help out, I would expect his help, not pure silence. If I had a friend who I had to wonder, did he say something? Or was that just talking to myself? I could ask and get an answer instead of pure silence. This relationship of silence requires all my devotion, all my love, all of me, or else. And to make things weirder, they have pre-planned everything that will happen in this relationship and orchestrated it to be so. If someone told me about that kind of relationship, I would say it's toxic. It's one they shouldn't be in. And that's how I feel myself. If the Christian God, for some reason, happens to be a real God, I don't think I'd want a relationship with him. Let me ask you, if there was no heaven, if there was no hell, if this is all there was, would you still follow God? For some people, yeah, for sure. But for others, nope. It was just that reward or fear of punishment that made you follow. And that should at least make you think a little. The next issue I have with religion is people. And while you would think the people who follow Jesus' teachings would be loving, caring, and kind, you often would be wrong. I remember being taught that the Pharisees were bad, and we looked upon them as being bad because of their hypocritical way they acted. But I would argue that many modern-day Christians are just like the Pharisees. They are hypocrites who say one thing and do another. Now, obviously, there are many differences. The main point I am making here, however, is that while Christians preach Christianity, rarely do I see it within actions. They preach that all have sinned and fall short, and then they judge the other sinners themselves as if they are better. And while they preach love and kindness, I find they chase away people who are different than them. There are some who can really ham it up to make people think that they are holy. They aren't doing it to help people, they are doing it so that people will think how good they are. They'll be like, wow, they're so good. They're doing it for external praise, is I guess what I'm saying. I knew a few awful people who suddenly got all holy and loving as soon as they got to church, but as soon as they got out, they went right back to being monsters. And let me be clear, I am not saying every Christian is bad. I have met good Christians. I know there are good Christians. I'm also not saying every atheist or agnostic is good, because there are bad atheists, there are bad agnostics. What you believe doesn't necessarily mean you act in the way you believe, apparently. Christians are supposed to be a light upon the world, and yet in my experience they have been far from that. Do you know how cool it is to see a selfless, loving Christian person who actually cares about people? And I mean all people, and isn't some judgmental, money-hungry individual. It's awesome. But it feels more rare than I'd like, and despite the hundreds of Christians I've met, I'd say only like a few might have been good Christians living for Christ. And that's kinda sad. I'm not a Christian. I shouldn't know the Bible better than these people who are. I shouldn't be taking care of the needy better than someone who is. I shouldn't be teaching people how to love each other better than someone who is. I don't know that I want to be associated with being a Christian. It has such a negative connotation from Christians. But I do want to challenge you to be better. I do want you to love people who are different than you. In fact, if you meet someone from witchcraft, it's okay to talk to them. It's okay to treat them like anyone else. You don't talk to them with the intent to make them Christian, just like you wouldn't want them to talk to you with the intent to make you a witch. You just talk to them like a person, not a conversation goal or someone to be judged for you to feel like you have done good. I know plenty of witches, and well, I don't have the same beliefs as them. We still get along, we hang out, and they are loving and understanding people. Even talk to a Satanist, and you will find a lot of them don't even believe in Satan. Talk to someone gay, or lesbian, or trans. Again, not to tell them that you think they're sinning or anything like that, but talk to them like actual people, like you would anyone else. I know so many caring, kind people within that community, and you know what? If I went to a gay bar, even though I am a straight man, I feel like I would be safer and less judged there than I would be at a church. Despite how often Fox News really wants you to believe drag queens are out to get your kids or whatever, Fox News doesn't care about your kids, man. They care about trying to make you fear what you don't understand so you will keep watching. They don't want to challenge your beliefs. They want you to be stuck within those beliefs so they can sell you things. If they did care about the children and the sexual abuse towards children, they would also talk about how it happens in churches and stuff, but they don't. What I'm saying, I guess, is talk to Hindus, talk to Buddhists, talk to atheists, witches, gays, lesbians, people of other races and other countries, and guess what? The more time you spend with these people, the more they stop being a scary other thing or a sinful other thing or whatever that we need to judge, and the more they become exactly what they are. Human. Just like me, just like you, and every human who wants to be treated with respect and love. This section was a tough one to bring up because I know people can minimize the hurt caused by just chopping it up to church hurt and give an excuse that those bad people, those weren't real Christians. But this isn't just a me thing. Lots of people have been hurt by lots of churches and lots of people in the churches, and it doesn't even feel like accountability is ever taken. Conversion camps are incredibly harmful. Hell houses are harmful. Letting people who continue to abuse others, continue to have positions of power within the church, is incredibly harmful. And I realize I'm coming off a little aggressive and I sound like, oh, I am better than you or whatever. I'm not. So let me go ahead and tell some of the shameful things I did in the name of Christianity as well, because I grew up Christian. I remember there was this lesbian girl in my youth group, and I heard the other teens talking and judging her behind her back, including a girl who I really liked. And so when she talked to me about it, I told her that I was going to go talk to the lesbian. And I did. I don't remember my words, but I'm sure they weren't the kindest. And my peers showed me more respect after that, and I was treated as if it was a good thing that I had chased away this sinner. But it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't a loving thing. It's something I'm very ashamed of. I was that girl's bully. And in my mind, and the minds of the other teens, I was the good guy. But I was not. I wasn't. Another example is I met this witch who was crying, and I'm not sure what kind, as I didn't even take the time to find out, but instead, I was using this moment to preach some Jesus. Clearly, I didn't actually care about her and why she was upset. I didn't even ask. I just said Christian stuff. I was not the light of the world to anyone but the other Christians. On top of that, I had multiple friends who, upon confessing various things to pastors, were blackmailed by those pastors into some pretty disgusting acts. And, of course, I would like to call them out specifically, but those are not my stories to tell. Just know that a lot of people are hurt by more than just self-righteous superiority complexes. I can still talk about me and my experiences, though. Most of my religious trauma came from my father and his various friends. Sometimes there was physical abuse, sometimes there was verbal abuse, and I remember living next door to a kid who was, in my opinion, abused worse than I was, and I wanted to tell him about Jesus, but I was scared of him seeing how my father would treat me, and then he would think, well, there's no difference between Christians and non-Christians, so why bother? Because I can tell you my father was not the light of the world as a Christian or anything like that. This is not some new phenomenon. Historically, Christianity has been pretty oppressive and violent to many groups of people different than them. When Christopher Columbus showed up and enslaved people and mass murdered them and forced them to be Christian, do you think the natives were grateful for Christianity? When pilgrims brought so much disease that the natives were dying off by the masses, and they justified it by saying clearly God wanted them to have this land, do you think they were grateful for Christianity? Do you think there were no victims within the Salem witch trials, or when we used the Bible to justify slavery? Were all those just false Christians? And God, he just let all this happen, but for some reason he intervened in some high school football game to help your team win? I don't know about that. This has been a problem and still is. Even if we go away from the violence and the judgment, there are many other issues. Today, the greed of Christianity is crazy. I'm for sure not talking about all churches here, but the particular point is mainly about megachurches and TV evangelists and such. It was Jesus who was against greed. He got angry when people were selling things in the temple. He was against greed. He told a rich man if he wanted to be good, he needed to give his money to the poor and follow him. In Mark 10:25, he says, "In fact, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." And see, I think that verse is very important. I do not like the ultra-rich because there is an ultra-poor. Too many people struggle to live and keep afloat, yet we idolize those who have more wealth than they know what to do with. How rich the ultra-rich are and how poor the ultra-poor are is unacceptable, to the point where I don't think you can be that rich and not be a bad person. If you have the money and power to help people, but you are buying, a fifth yacht? Plain and simple, you're just a bad person. Now, I think Jesus might disagree on different sub-points of that subject. I'm sure me and him would have different disagreements, but he made it clear he's not a fan of the rich, and he wants them to give away their money and follow him. And in what way exactly does a megachurch do this? A church whose goal is to get more rich and have more people. And why does the congregation of Christians idolize those who are rich and treat them like they are better and smarter than they are? Jimmy Swaggart, Kenneth Copeland, Joel Osteen, etc. Basically all megachurch pastors and TV evangelists usually are greedy, rich, bad people who use Christianity for their tax-free gains but aren't living out a Christ-like lifestyle at all. And even away from our megachurches, we still worship the rich. The amount of support Donald Trump and Elon Musk receive from Christians is sickening. They are both mega rich and spread constant lies and hatred. When Bishop Buddy asked Donald Trump to have mercy on those who were scared of what he was gonna do, he reacted negatively towards her, and him and other Christians instead treated her like a monster for asking for mercy, for having empathy.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors.
And that hurt a lot to see that. I felt really sad watching that. Those are people who are exactly that. People. And all she was asking was to show mercy to those people. And I promise you, if Christians were treated the same way as minority groups of people without a lot of power, they would also be upset. But they should also be upset about how their fellow Christians treat these people. I hear Christians say to others, "You need Jesus," so I'm saying it back. Christians, you need Jesus because I can't tell you even have him. Let's hop away from greed and move on to just other activities and other things. I don't know. We got snake churches, and they believe they need to dance around with snakes. Now, while these are less common, they still exist, and obviously it's an issue here because people die because of the snakes. And to justify this, they use Mark 16:18. They will pick up the snakes with their hands, and when they drink the deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. They will place their hands on sick people, and they will get well. Not only is that crazy, but that's even one of the verses I've already mentioned being an addition to the Bible. You see why the stuff in here should have some skepticism around it? We got conversion camps where they commit awful acts to people who can't change how they were wired any more than you can. If you are a straight person, you can't just suddenly will yourself to be gay. That's not how that works. We got our people standing outside of businesses they don't agree with, screaming at people that they are going to hell as if somehow this is going to cause any positive. Have you ever heard people speak in tongues? It's this wild thing where Christians speak into what an outsider sounds sort of like gibberish, but it's supposed to be the Holy Spirit talking through them. And this can lead to a weird stigma in churches where if you don't have one of the gifts, like the gift of tongues, then you aren't as good, you aren't as holy, or you aren't as close to God. Now, they don't specifically say this, they just show this through their actions. Next thing you know, even more people are speaking in tongues just to show that they also love God just as much, and it's a really awkward situation to be in. There's this thing called being slain in the Spirit, where they push you and you are supposed to fall over amazed by the power of the Spirit. Well, I didn't fall. I didn't want to unless I felt God pushing me and not some pastor, and so I never fell when he pushed. So I stood there awkwardly while everyone else fell, and I was the only one standing, and eventually I just went down too because I didn't want the rumors or gossip going around me. I feel like I've gotten way off track, and I've just been rambling. I'm sorry. To sum it up, I guess I'm saying Christianity can be more performative than an actual loving, practiced lifestyle. If Jesus came down right now to America, we'd probably call him woke, belittle him, and then deport him. Oh man. Now look, I'm not saying other groups don't need to step it up, or that Christians have done zero good, or anything like that. And this video is getting long, and I didn't even talk about everything I had planned to. Like how there are cult leaders today people believe in, how we have people today claiming to be Jesus, how the entire creation arguments, all of that stuff, demon possession, just a lot of stuff I haven't talked about, and maybe I will talk more about it in part 2, but I'm already kind of a little worried about the comment section in part 1. The point of this video was not to say I am smart and you are dumb, I am right and you are wrong. The point is just to think about what you believe and why others might believe differently, and to be more loving and understanding of those people. If someone comes up to you and says, God says we should get married, you can be a little skeptical of that, rather than just marry them. And it's sad I have to point this out, but it's unlikely God told you to start a war or to be in a war or to buy extravagant things or that you are better than a specific group of people. I doubt he says that. I'm also not saying all Christians are bad. Christianity has good things in it too. A lot of religions have good things in there. I'm just saying be skeptical of it and watch out for the bad things, and please stop making those who disagree with you live in fear of you. I can coexist with a Christian. There are Christians who I highly respect. However, I cannot coexist with racists, homophobes, sexists, etc. If your existence threatens another's existence, there can't be coexistence, and as much of an oxymoron as it sounds, for tolerance to work, I must be intolerant of the intolerant. I'm not asking you to change your faith. I'm not asking to have mine changed. I'm simply asking, I guess, to just let me be and stop trying to change me and be more skeptical of things and be more loving. I guess those are the things I'm trying to say.